The National Congress Party has the capacity to implement but lacks the political will. The SPLA, on the other hand, has the commitment but is still weak and disorganized. There is a real risk of renewed conflict down the road unless the National Congress Party begins to implement the comprehensive peace agreement in good faith and the SPLM becomes a stronger and more effective implementing partner. The international community, which has largely abandoned the political engagement and commitment that was so crucial to achieving the peace agreement in the first place, must forcefully re-engage with the process to ensure the agreement's successful implementation. Otherwise, the peace cohabitation between the government of South Sudan and the National Congress Party will not bear fruit, but instead becomes a bogus cohabitation. To implement the comprehensive peace agreement and a concrete strategy for international relations credentials in order to change the policies of a government that is still faces active civil war in the east and west. Although painful, the SPLM is faring better in the south, as the government of Southern Sudan slowly inches forward in the face of enormous physical and structural challenges. The weak administration in the south is creating an environment exploited by the Ugandan rebel Lord Resistance Army, which is allegedly used to receive support from the Sudan Armed Forces, and more recently from the SPLM, have significantly expanded its activities in eastern and western Equatoria, threatening to become a homegrown Sudanese problem. The current equation for peace cohabitation in Sudan, that is one bank with two windows, one integrated army unit with a bulk of forces detached from the unity government, enormous challenges which severely undermine its ability to function as an effective partner in the national unity government. The SPLM faces two simultaneous tasks as the leading partner in the new autonomous government of Southern Sudan and the minority partner in the new government of national unity, wrecked by internal divisions and contradictions, and with no factional party structures or party decision-making mechanisms. A big vacuum left after the death of John Garang completely overwhelmed the SPLM. They are unable to successfully or consistently challenge the National Congress Party on most issues relating to the comprehensive peace agreement. This is most apparent in Khartoum, where the minority SPLM controls only a handful of ministerial or state ministerial positions, as well as the first president position, but does not yet have enough members integrated into the national civil service or other national institutions, such as the media, in order to counter the regime's ideology. SPLM must urgently reorganize the SPLA and develop a targeted military strategy to counter the LRA's growing presence in Equatoria, including through necessary support from the international community. Although out of good faith, the SPLM must cease to pursue its own mediation efforts between LRA and the government of Uganda, and instead coordinate with and support the existing initiative led by Ugandan mediator Betty Dicom. The government of South Sudan needs to resolve internal divisions and contradictions and immediately move to begin rebuilding party structures, working towards an SPLM national convention in order to be a more effective partner in the implementation process. Take immediate steps to develop a common internal approach on the reorganization of the SPLM. Prioritize the reorganization of the army together with transparent and accountable salary structures in order to help improve security in the south and combat the growing threat posed by the LRA is to achieve an everlasting peace. And the best vehicle to drive through this treacherous land of vast savanna desert, the Sud, and the equatorial rainforest is South Africa. The methods of reconciliation and forgiveness is what made South Africa bury the racial segregation, apartheid, and move towards sustainable development and good governance. The National Constitution Review Commission failed to bring in most of the main northern opposition parties, then boycott it as rigid in favor of the National Congress Party and the SPLM, as well as the armed groups from East and Western Sudan. Despite the passage of important resolution by the UN Security Council, the situation in Sudan remains volatile. In Darfur, where thousands of overwhelmingly civilians continue to die, stronger measures are still needed to restore security and prevent further suffering. Sudan needs more measures that are effective to preserve and implement the peace deal in order to avert the outbreak of serious new civil conflict, for example, completely dilapidated, filthy dirty, and with extremely poor sanitation and safety. The typical example is Juba University, which is still in North Sudan. How on earth do you expect to develop a nation without such institutions? Southern politicians are often quick to blame the regimes in Khartoum for having a lion's share of the national cake. It was relatively fair during the war when Southern had lacked financial backup. But for the last 3 years, since the signing of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, there is no reliable telephone network in Juba. To call a relative in Juba, you must go through Khartoum. This is very sad indeed. With so many mobile phone companies dying to make money, what is stopping SPLM from bypassing Khartoum and bringing MTN or Celtel to South Africa? The South-South dialogue with Southern political opposition groups launched in Nairobi was a positive step to reconciliation. The same modalities could be adapted to South-North dialogue. The early expectations of the peace have not been met. The biggest danger to sustainable peace in South Sudan is not politics or religion as perceived by many. The biggest challenge is the manifestation in the equation of corrupt government of Southern Sudan officials who are caught on using their positions to enrich themselves by colluding with foreign consultants to fund infrastructure contracts with kickback, channel offshore accounts. There are reports of top SPL officials climbing housing ladders in neighboring countries such as Kenya, Uganda, and indeed in Europe, USA, and Australia. The question here is not how they manage to afford such expensive houses within a short time in the office, but rather why buy houses in neighboring countries and not in the Sudan? A country completely destroyed by decades of fighting and is desperate for reconstruction. Are they anticipating another civil war? Nevertheless, the SPLM leadership must begin to democratize its movement and empower the embryonic civil institutions. On the other hand, to avoid another uprising, the SPLM must do its part in preventing an eventual breakdown of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. It must make fundamental shifts in the way it operates. It has struggled, however, in its transition from a rebel movement to a political party. Indeed, to the point that it lacks comprehensiveness and transparent decision-making, therefore revealing in some ways its long-term opponent approach to governance. The long-rooted tribal and regional hostilities, especially after the redivision of South into 3 regional states, Southern politicians shifted their loyalty only to their tribal lines. It is far behind its timetable for converting its guerrillas into a new army and has made little progress in creating institutional structures of government and changing excessively centralized methods of taking decisions. Weaknesses that have been compounded before the Comprehensive Peace Agreement by lack of national referendum will produce an independent South, thus costing Khartoum much of its oil and other mineral wealth. There are signs the National Congress Party seeks to undercut implementation through its use of the militias, the South Sudan Defense Forces, bribery, and through the tactics of divide and rule. It actively encourages hostilities between Southern groups with the hope that intra-South fighting will prove sufficiently destabilizing that the referendum can be postponed indefinitely without its being blamed. These tactics will likely intensify if pressure over Darfur diminishes. Therefore, more consistent, proactive, and forceful engagement by the international community is another required ingredient to see the Comprehensive Peace Agreement peacefully through the pitfalls that lie ahead. The key international organizations and concerned governments should urgently agree and coordinate at a high level on what is necessary without regard to institutions, and ultimately allow Southern self-determination referendum after 6 years interim period, and lack of capacity in the South to establish and empower basic structures of governance. To keep the accord on track, the international community must focus and widen participation and transparency, particularly handling of oil revenue, promote SPLM dialogue with the government, allied militias, and quickly deploy the UN peace support mission, whose monitoring operations will be key to breaking the link between Khartoum and those southern posts. The peace deal poses a real threat to many groups associated with the National Congress Party's regime, which signed the Comprehensive Peace Agreement under some constraints, both to deflect international pressure over Darfur and to strengthen its domestic power base. by securing a partnership with the SPLM. Most members recognize the free and fair election required in 2009, which likely
comprehensive for as long as there is war in Darfur and Eastern Sudan. And the SPLM and the National Congress must do everything necessary by all the Sudanese people and for all the Sudanese people.
The situation in Darfur is still volatile. Many peace talks were held and collapsed, and the government is seeking a military solution. The Chadian president, Idriss Deby, whose attempt at peace negotiation collapsed before, is still offering his good office to seek a settlement. While it would be unnecessary complication to link the Darfur conflict to that in the south, at a minimum, the National Congress and SPLM must find a peaceful settlement to the war in Darfur. The responsibility for bringing the everlasting peace in the Sudan is very unpredictable indeed, unless the SPLM and the government of Sudan, before the interim period ends, start reconciling and forgiving each other for all the atrocities committed, as the South Africans did. Otherwise, their gods will haunt them forever, and another civil war will begin. The main obstacles are the
Today, July 9, 2005, is Sudan's Day. The SPLM and the National Congress have delivered to you a comprehensive peace agreement, a just and honorable peace with dignity for all.
The injustice and deeply rooted mistrust after decades of hostilities between both sides was more evident when the government security organs refused the SPLM media to cover John Garang's inauguration.
دكتور جون كان ديمابيور رئيس الحركة الشعبية لتحرير السودان، نائبا أول لرئيس الجمهورية ورئيسا لحكومة جنوب السودان، صدر تحت توثيق اليوم الثاني من شهر جمادى الثاني 1420 هجرية، الموافق اليوم التاسع من شهر يوليو 2005، مشير عمر حسن أحمد البشير رئيس الجمهورية. I agree on behalf of the Indians, the orphans and widows on both sides. And on behalf of all those Sudanese who perished in the war, and those who lost their loved ones and property in the protracted and violent conflict, I assure you that that conflict is over. Fellow countrymen and women,
working together. It is sustainable when all the interim constitution is respected. It will be sustainable when we respect what the CPS says. We know we have been fighting in different ways, inside and outside. So we cannot really claim that one group has really fought this war to the best of their knowledge. Those who are inside this country, they have fought. Those who are in the liberation movement in the bushes of South Sudan, they have fought. Those who are in exile, they have fought, using their own contribution, using media, and they have made a lot of pressure. So it is a time now for us to come back, for us to come and develop.
That would like to join the SPLM to strengthen the Southern agenda, especially when options in the referendum include secession. The question is, will the SPLM have the capacity to reconcile all these conflicting alliances? Likely, in the first half of interim period will not be the toughest for the SPLM. It is surely the second half when the Sudanese people go to the polls to elect the new legislators. This will be the test of the SPLM's transition from bullet to ballot.
Somebody like myself who have fought in the war for the last 22 years, I've lost my leg, and I feel proud today that our people have achieved what why they have lost their life and why they have lost part of their body for dignity and freedom. And the fact that after 6 years, people of the South Sudan and other marginalized areas will exercise self-determination, they will express. But do you think that this is sustainable? Well, that's the thing that we need to do.